How does vulnerability lead to greater courage and a transformed life? And how does it lead to consistency and success? That's what we're delving into today in this episode. Hey, this is Dr. Dwain Woode, and I'm excited that you're here to join me on day number 48 for my 100-day walk to consistency. Remember, each day we're adding a new piece to the puzzle. We're adding a new part that helps us to become stronger, better version of ourselves, to become more consistent. Remember, consistency is your superpower. It is what allows us to do all the things we need to do to be successful. Let's go ahead. I'll see you on the walk. So today we're talking about courage and vulnerability. And the first thing is really to understand what courage and what vulnerability is. What they are, I guess I should say. And so courage, a lot of times we see courage as that ability to not be afraid. So we think of the superhero, we think of those people that have done great things, and we imagine that there are these tremendous opportunities, there's these tremendous difficulties that they find themselves in, and they step up, and because they have courage, they don't fear what's going on, and so they end up performing these magnificent feats. The truth is, though, that courage really is not the absence of fear, but courage is the ability to function and to perform despite fear. One of the conversations I have with my son often, or I had with my son often, was when there was something that was happening and he would say that he was scared, he was afraid, and I would say to him, yeah, but that doesn't mean you don't have to do it. Right? And so courage is really not having no fear. Courage is the desire that despite the fear, that we're going to perform, that we are going to move in the direction of that thing that needs to be done so that we can be successful. And so there are so many things that we can be afraid of. Things in our relationships, on our jobs, things that come from our past, financial issues, relational issues, health issues, right? And that's a big one. And often we remember that there are those stress responses, right? The fight or the flight. But we forget about the third one, which is freeze. And so fear, when it produces that place where you are frozen, then that is what the problem is. And so our courage allows us, despite those things that might be happening around us, despite the fact that we may not have all the answers, despite the fact that we don't know how things are going to work out, despite the fact that we don't have the skills, the courage says that I'm afraid, but I'm still going to move forward into this space, right? So that's what courage is. And there are so many different ways that we celebrate the strength that comes with courage, but we negate the true meaning of courage. And so we put people up as fearless, right? So he is fearless in the face of that. He is fearless, he has no fear. And I want to convince you that it is not the absence of fear, but the ability to function and to move despite fear. Now, on the other side, there is vulnerability. And while we celebrate strength and we celebrate courage and we celebrate the success that comes from the power that courage seemingly gives us, we often negate, and in many cultures, the vulnerability is seen as a weakness. And so that if we show what we're feeling, then that is seen as a weakness. Now, we just had a conversation a little while ago in my family, and as guys, often we're asked what we're thinking, what we're feeling. And I had a conversation with my son recently, and I said to him, I said, hey, there's going to be times when people ask you what you're thinking, what you're feeling, And you may not be thinking anything, you may not be feeling anything, and it's okay. You don't have to make something up, right? But if there is something there and you are in a safe space, then it's okay to allow that to be seen, allow that to be known. Now, notice what I said, in a safe space. And this goes particularly for those of us who tend to hold things pretty close to the chest, right? Because one of the reasons why we do that is because either we've been hurt in the past, or we've been taught that if we allow people to see that part of us, then they can use that against us, and that is detrimental. Okay, so I want to make sure that I'm saying to you that if you're in a safe space, then vulnerability is not that dangerous thing that we've been taught that it is. And so vulnerability is the ability to allow the true you to be seen, the true person that's behind the feeling, the true person that's behind, and I want to say the facade, but that thing that we've put up for other people to see. In our office, we do what's called a DISC profile. It's a personality profile. And so the DISC profile allows for us to be able to identify in our team members the best way to communicate with them, the best way to give them information, the best way. For example, I'll talk about mine. I'm a high I, okay? I'm interactive. And so one of the things that used to happen is I also function as the IT person at my office. We don't have an IT person, and that's my background. So, well, I shouldn't say we don't have an IT person. I do have an IT person who does an amazing job in our office. But often I walk into the office and things that are going on may be things that I can solve. And so I walk through the door, and immediately as I walk through the door, I'm bombarded with, this is not working, that's not working, the printer's this, the network's not connecting, patient called, and we got a call from the ER, we got a call from the lab. And so I get bombarded with all those things. Well, we did the DISC profile, and let me back up to say that it was not, so my day didn't start out well, okay? And so we did the DISC profile, and everyone realized, myself included, was that there was a way to have a conversation with me. And the conversation goes like this. Hey, good morning, Dr. Woode, how are you? Just some chit chat, some whatever's going on. And then, oh, by the way, the network is not working, the printer's not working. Someone called in from the ER, some lab called and said that something was going on. And so my day went better because the ice was broken. So I'm a high I. I like interaction, okay? Now, I don't tell everybody that. Now, you know that now. But it was not something that I shared with everyone. Because I didn't always feel safe to be able to share that with everybody. And so I did not do that. And so that is a part of me, right, that was not hidden, but not readily shared. And so there are things about you that was a simple one, but there are things about you that it may not be, you may not feel that you want to share with people because, it is something that is personal, and that's okay. But I want to challenge the idea that being vulnerable is bad, particularly when we're in a safe space. Now, here is the beauty. Here's the beauty. When we are vulnerable, it allows us to have tremendous growth, tremendous community. It allows us to be open. It allows us to be free. Because think of the energy that it takes to work in a situation where your personal self is not being catered to. You're not being fed. You're not being you're not being seen. Let me say it that way, okay? And so being vulnerable allows us to be seen and allows us to be in that space where we can be nurtured. And so our energy is no longer being used to overcome or to compensate for the things that we're not getting. Okay, so vulnerability and courage go hand in hand because they allow for a symbiotic relationship in terms of our ability to be successful. And so that's understanding vulnerability and understanding what courage really is. And as you see, it's a little windy out today. Okay, so the symbiotic relationship between courage and vulnerability is very important for us to understand, because if we don't, then we run into difficulty in what we need to do. So when we're able to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we open up to new experiences. Isn't that usually the case for all the concepts? Well, a lot of the concepts that we've been talking about. Because when we are not being vulnerable, we're guarded. We're putting energy into keeping that part of ourselves away from everyone. And it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy for that. When we are vulnerable, then challenges are easier to manage because we have the support of people around us. So imagine what it's like to, first of all, be in a place where you're not being vulnerable. And so you're keeping things pretty close to the chest, to the breast. And something's going on around you, and you're dealing with that by yourself. Imagine also that there is someone in your community, at your job, someone that you work with, who is able to say, hey, I know that thing over there that's about to happen, or that thing that happened, or this situation is not one that Dwain handles well or is comfortable in. Let me step over and let me give some assistance. Notice, I didn't even have to ask for the assistance, but because that person knows me, because I have been vulnerable, they understand that this situation is coming up, this conversation that we're about to have, this thought that was just expressed is something that I'm going to need some help with. And they step into that space because I have been vulnerable, okay? And I've allowed them to see that. One of the things that I struggled with, and let's be vulnerable. One of the things that I struggled with was being an endocrinologist who had issues with weight and who was struggling to control my blood sugars, because I felt that people would judge me and say, well, after all, if the endocrinologist can't do it, what are my chances of being successful? Or, man, he really doesn't know anything because he struggles with weight himself. And so for a long time, I couldn't share, I couldn't be in the space where people saw that part of me. And you know what I come to realize? Well, those aren't my people. Right? So my people are the ones who see my struggle and say, wow, this is a real thing, because he's sharing with us where he is in this space. And so if he can be open to let us know what his struggles are, then I can be open with him. And so my people that I now see are the people who are able to be open and say, hey man, I ate some ice cream. I know what was going on. And we can talk about, well, why did you eat the ice cream? Or, man, I know I was supposed to be doing the 100-day walk, and I did 30 days, I did 20 days, I did 40 days, and then I fell off. And I could say, okay, let's get back on. How do we move in that direction? So there's no guilt, there's no berating, but it's being open and vulnerable. And so my people, your people, the ones who are really your people, are not the ones that are going to use that thing against you. They're going to be the ones that allow you to be in the space where you can be vulnerable and ultimately be courageous. So you're opening yourself up for new experiences and for growth, and you're opening yourself up for community. When we're vulnerable, vulnerability actually is probably one of the deepest places for bravery and for courage. So think of the courage that it takes to be afraid to share and to do it anyway and to be vulnerable. You know why that's difficult? You know why being vulnerable is difficult? It's difficult because we like community. And traditionally we've been taught that when people don't like something about us, people don't like us, then we are put out of the community, right? Think about it. And so in order not to be put out of the community, in order to be able to stay in the tribe, we hide those parts of ourselves that are really our true selves so that we can become a part of that community and we can stay in the community. But like I just said, maybe that's not your community in the first place, right? Maybe you now need to start your own community with people who are open to that vulnerability. Now, let me hasten to say that there are some things that we need to understand about community and understand about vulnerability, and that's why I continue to say a safe space, right? It has to be a safe space if we're going to understand and use this concept, okay? So I want you to consider for a moment when leaders share their own experiences. I want you to consider for a minute what I just shared. So when when my son was graduating from 8th grade probably, yeah, I was asked to give the commencement address. And I did my address, I did everything. I went up there and I thought I did a good job. But as I was ending the conversation, I realized that the speech that I gave, the talk that I gave was a good one, okay? Up until that point, everything I did, I think, was motivational, but I had not really shared with them a personal story. And the reason I hadn't shared a personal story was because I thought I was going to be judged. And this is the story I just shared with you. And I came back, well, not came back, but I was up there and I paused for a moment and I began telling the story, okay? And ended up finishing through and we were done. Now, here's the kicker. Here's the thing. More people have talked to me and expressed to me their joy and expressed to me their appreciation for sharing during that story, during that address, not the original talk that I did, right? Because I spent the entire time talking about what my original plan was. But the few moments that I spent to open up and be vulnerable, that was where people began coming in and saying, hey, that was a good thing for them. And they began sharing with me their experiences. So think about that. Think about what happens when we are vulnerable, and the strength and community that I've gained as a result of that has been immense and has been amazing, okay? And here's one of the things for me. I now understand that there are people around me, people that I've known, who are struggling with some of the same things I was struggling with, right? So often we think we are by ourselves, but it's not that we're by ourselves. There are people around us who have not shared because they too are not, they're not being vulnerable, okay? So when we're vulnerable, it allows us to grow. So what are some of the benefits to both, right? So what are some of the benefits to enhancing authenticity, of vulnerability and courage? Vulnerability and courage. So when we embrace both, that is doing something despite the fact that we're fearful, that's courage, and allowing people to see us for our true selves, that's vulnerability. When we embrace both of those, then something amazing begins to happen, right? It enhances our authenticity and enhances our connections. Like I just said, we then begin to see, we begin to have a deeper connection with our community, which is amazing because community is one of those keystone things that we need in our. It's a tool that we need to help us move forward. Because when we are in good community, when we are in a community that is supportive, that strengthens us, then we can go much, much farther. And we can be authentic. So we don't have to use our energy to hide within the community. Okay? It leads to deeper connections built on trust and built on respect. So we begin trusting those people more because they know the true us and they still are able to say, oh yeah, we're good. We're good. I often say that there are some communities that I belong to where I can start talking about something that's happened with me and the entire community understands. I don't have to explain it to them, right? I got a couple of friends who will say a word and all of a sudden, our wives are like, what are y'all talking about? But it's something, a connection that we have where we understand each other, okay? So that allows us, so embracing both allows us to do that. And then personal growth and empowerment. The combination, when we embrace both, it encourages personal growth. We've talked about that because you begin to experience more and more things. You don't have to spend the energy hiding. You can be open and free to think, right? Remember, when you're stressed, when you're guarded, then your thought processes are hindered, right? You're not thinking as expansively as you could. You're not thinking about, you're not thinking outside the box because energies are being diverted somewhere else. So personal growth, it empowers you to overcome obstacles and face challenges genuinely, right? You're able to say now, okay, I need help. You're able to say now, I don't know. You're able to say now, that thing right there, I am not getting involved with. But when we are not ourselves, then we have to put on, we have to pretend, we have to go along with some things that we don't agree with because people don't know the true us and our true thoughts. So being vulnerable is courageous. It is a place of strength and it is a place of personal growth. And then when we are vulnerable and we can be very courageous, it opens us up and it leads to more meaningful achievements. So when you are courageous and vulnerable, you attempt things that maybe you would not normally attempt. You're able to be in spaces where you can put the full power of your abilities to work so that now the opportunities that I have, the chances of success are much bigger and much greater, okay? So vulnerability and courage, that's how they work together. So what are some practical ways, and the wind is picking up a little bit here, that's okay, we're gonna keep going. What are some practical ways to enhance and to cultivate courage and vulnerability? Well, one, and here it is, I'm gonna say it again, right, is a mindset change. Yeah, you guys knew that was coming. There's so much that begins in that real estate that's between our ears that it's incredible, right? So it's a mindset change. So start by redefining what it means to be strong. There's physical strength, and then there's inner fortitude. What does it mean to be strong? No longer does it simply mean not being fearful, right? Because think about opportunities that may come, right? If you define courage as not being afraid, and opportunities that you go after are the ones where you're not afraid, then there are lots of things that come at you that you'll never attempt because of fear. Like those kids we talked about in our study yesterday, the ones who were praised for their ability. Because they were praised for the ability, when something came where they thought they may not do as well, they never attempted it. But the ones who were praised, or not praised, given support for their stick-to-itiveness and their process and their determination, they really didn't care whether they succeeded or not. All they wanted to do was they wanted to try. And so same thing here. If you're defining your ability to do something, or some things that you should go after simply because you're not afraid of it, there are a lot of opportunities that will come that you will never attempt. Okay? And that's not, I had to hit my camera for a minute, and that's not where we want to be. Okay? So mindset shift. So we have to start redefining what it means to be strong. Strength isn't about hiding your feeling. It's not about not being afraid. It's about doing something even if there is fear that surrounds it, okay? And then you want to do a daily practice, right? So routine, consistency. That's what we've been talking about. So implement practices that push you slightly outside of your comfort zone. A few days ago, we talked about that. Doing things that make us a little bit more uncomfortable. One of the things that happened to me, and you guys get the backstory because you're here, was when I decided I was going to do this series. I imagined that there were some things that were coming up that would prevent me from doing it, right? So there were some travels that we had. There was other things I needed to do in my on my channel, some videos I need to do, some commitments I had. And I was talking or listening. I'm always listening to something, right? I was listening to a podcast, and the speaker on the podcast was saying, often we try to see the end of something, and if we can't see the end, we don't start. Think about it. We want to see every step. We want to see every turn. We want to see every plan. And because we don't see that, we don't begin. And so after listening to that, I decided, I'm not sure what the end of this is going to be. But I know that this is something that's needed for myself and something that's needed for my community. And so we started. And so here we are, 47 days in, right? And we're doing it. And I want you to understand that it is not a lack of lack of understanding, or it's not that I have seen completely the end of our series. No, we're doing this as we go, right? I've got the outlines, I've got the topics, and as you see, I go walking whenever I can. Right, whether it's in the morning, it's at lunchtime, it's at nighttime, it's almost getting dark. When the weather's not bad, you've seen me on the elliptical a couple of times. So all of those are things that were unexpected and things that were unseen. But it allowed me, or stepping into it allowed me to say I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone. So that wasn't comfortable starting without knowing. But yeah, we're gonna do this anyway, because that is what I wanna do, and that is what I need and what my community needs, right? So implement something that's gonna push you outside of your comfort zone. Speak up about your feelings in your relationships, on your job. I have medical students that come through, and often when they're presenting a patient to me, I don't talk, usually, until they're done. I don't interject, I don't ask questions. I allow them to present the patient, and I allow them to come up with a plan for that patient. What is your assessment of the patient, and what is your plan for the patient? And the reason I allow them to do that, or I tell them that I need them to do that, is because I want them to develop confidence in their abilities. When we don't own it, then we don't have confidence. So they get to see when they're done whether I agree or I disagree, whether I'm going to change or we're going to proceed with what their plan is, right? So in your sphere, speak up. Own your verbiage, own your ideas, own your thoughts. It may be wrong. People may disagree with it. People may say, oh, that's the worst idea I have. Now you understand how to adjust your thoughts. Now you understand how to present your thoughts. Now you understand that, oh, people could disagree with me and I don't die, right? So this is helping you to build courage and help you to build vulnerability. And then ask for help when you need it, right? So this is being vulnerable. Saying to someone in your circle, saying to someone in your job, saying to maybe even your boss, hey, I need help with that. That's being vulnerable. And that allows you to know that you can ask for help. And sometimes maybe they don't provide help, but sometimes they do. And you know now that you can process, that you can succeed, that you can elicit help when needed. Because otherwise, you're out there by yourself. You think nobody cares, right? Maybe your boss explains to you, hey, we can help you, but it won't be till next week or whenever it is. But now you have an understanding, okay? And then ask, let me say this one a little differently, but share your thoughts even if you're unsure. That's a tough one. Share your thoughts even if you're unsure. And don't share them, right, being vulnerable, don't share them in a kind of wishy-washy way, right? Well, you know, I'm not really sure about this. I don't know if this is gonna work, but here's my thought. No, my thought is that we should try X, Y, or Z. My thought is that this relationship would benefit from this. My thought is that we can get up together and we can go walking. Notice I'm not being ambiguous. I'm not being wishy-washy. I am owning what I'm saying. Now the person may say, no, that's a terrible idea. No, that's not gonna work. No, that whatever it is they say, doesn't matter, because I have consistently been doing that, and now I'm confident I'm getting more confident in my abilities, okay? So that is the combination of courage and vulnerability. You know, we can't ever leave without a challenge. So grab your pad and your pencil or pen and let's go to it. So our challenge today is to identify a situation where you typically hold back due to fear of judgment or fear of failure. Find some area where you tend to hold back. You kind of sit in the back and you let everybody else do their thing, or you don't proceed, or you don't try, you don't attempt, because you're afraid of judgment or you're afraid of fear, right? So write that down. Choose to engage in some courageous or vulnerable act in that space. So, like I just did, right? I have been, in the past, struggling with allowing people to see the thought process behind my struggle with health, struggle with weight, struggle with blood sugar control. That was my fear, because I was afraid of being judged. So if I write that down, then the vulnerable act is to now, I've just shared that with you. I shared it with my son's class. I am now sharing it on my channel. I share it when I speak. I share it with people in my community. I share it at my church. I talk to it with my son, right? So begin taking an act that allows you to step out of that space. Okay, Share it in a safe space. Share it with friends and family. Share it with people you trust. And reflect, right? As you're sharing, I want you to reflect on what was going on that prevented you from sharing it. Now, after you've done that, then you come back and you sit down and you say, okay, I shared it with this person. This is how I feel. This is what happened. I'm still here. I'm still alive. I'm still here. I'm still alive. Okay? Because that's going to be very important as you are moving to become more consistent, become more vulnerable, and become more courageous. Oh man, this is and am I gonna say it? You guys know I'm gonna say it, right? This is one of my favorite talks. It's one of my favorite conversations, right? This idea of being vulnerable and being courageous. Okay, so as we end today's conversation, courage and vulnerability are kind of symbiotic in their relationship to each other. Remember that true bravery often means doing something despite the fact there's fear. And vulnerability is in a safe space, allowing people to see the true us, our true selves. Well, hey, I gotta say, thank you for hanging out with me. I'm always excited. Make sure you're doing the challenges. The challenges, they're just theory if you're not doing them. And make sure that you're doing the workbook, okay? We're coming back, and each day we're adding more to our toolbox. We'll be back tomorrow for day number 49 as we continue this walk to consistency, 100 days. This is Dr. Dwain Woode. Thank you for being with me. I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your health and your life, avoid complications, and go to the next level. All right, I'll see you on the walk tomorrow.